Madam Speaker. Before I get started, I just wanted to notify you I'll be spending my time with my good friend, fellow Calgarian, and sometimes airline seatmate, the member from Calgary-Crowfoot. Madam Speaker, there is nothing technical about the 2.2 million Canadians waiting in a food bank line hungry because of rising grocery prices due to this Liberal government's failed policies. There is nothing technical about the dad in Windsor who has just lost his job telling his kids around the dinner table that times are going to get tough because of the failed policies of this Liberal government. There is nothing technical about the single mom that's at the grocery store wondering what she can and cannot buy this week and how much she'll actually be able to eat because of failed Liberal policies. This Prime Minister was the guy who said that he could get Canada back on track. He sold himself to be the guy that would have the fastest growing in the economy in the G7. He sold himself as that during the election. What he ended up doing was plunging Canada into a full-blown Liberal recession. In fact, the only country in the entire G20 to do so. The Prime Minister is the only leader in the entire G7 to plunge their economy to have 3 out of 4 of the last quarters having economic decline. He's only been Prime Minister for a year and already delivering these failed results. And Canadians are the ones that are having to pay for it through food bank lines that are growing, through the insolvencies that are growing, and just the pain and suffering we're seeing all across this country because of failed policies. Now, last week, the PBO, the independent PBO, came out with a very, very scathing report on this government and their so-called fiscal anchors, which seem like they're not even existent anymore. First, this government, remember back in the day when Chrystia Freeland used to be here, she claimed debt to GDP would go down. Then they were so confident in that, they completely removed that as a fiscal anchor altogether. Just poof, got rid of it. And now they quietly, sneakily brought it back. But the PBO slammed them just last week, saying that debt to GDP ratio will go up, debunking their claim that it would go down. Then they brought in their last budget, they brought in another fiscal anchor. They said they would do deficit to GDP ratio. And the PBO slammed them last week, saying that they'll have less than 1% chance of meeting that fiscal anchor. But that percentage is still better than actually having a Liberal answer a question in this place. And then they said that they wouldn't go over or they would balance their operating budget. But we just found out last week that they're actually going to spend $7 billion more than what they sold Canadians. It's always these fake promises, these fake handshakes, fake MOUs. Everything about this government is fake. They sell themselves to be economic kings or someone that can handle the economy. But at the end of the day, it's always failure. It's more costs, more debt, more taxes, and it's always on the national credit card, which at the end of the day, Canadians have to pay for all these Liberal failures. The PBO says, and I quote, "Business investment continues to lag." That's something that the Bank of Canada has been warning for years now. In fact, the deputy governor of the Bank of Canada, Carolyn Rogers, many years ago said that Canada is in a break glass emergency. And they said that is about our productivity, which has not gone up. Productivity and the cost of living, or the way people live, standard of living, is the exact same thing according to them. And that's why we're seeing so much pain and suffering across the country. The PBO also says, and I quote, "Firms are postponing expansion plans because of heightened uncertainty. Persistent uncertainty is weighing on business investment and household spending. Business is not investing, expanding, or hiring because they do not have confidence in the direction of the economy." And that's clear to see in the numbers, Madam Speaker. In the last year alone, $1 trillion of Canadian investment, net Canadian investment, has flown out of Canada to the US. And since this Prime Minister took office, $20 billion of net investment has also left Canada. and you hear the Liberals brag about how good the economy is, how good Canadians have it, then why don't we see it? They'll cherry pick or they'll come up with these random things that they think that Canadians will fall for. But every time a Canadian goes to the grocery store, fills up a tank of gas, whenever they're paying for something or when they get their taxes done, they know and they see clearly and they fully experience this full-blown Liberal recession. Because when prices go up, when costs are up for them, that's what they actually experience. When their wages aren't going up, their incomes are not sufficient enough, that is something that they actually experience. And this Liberal government continues to tell those 2.2 million Canadians in a food bank line, you're just technically hungry. You're just technically out of food. You're just technically out of money. And to those people that are missing their mortgage payments, you're just technically experiencing that. But this is what they're actually experiencing. Canadians are suffering. The Liberals refuse to even listen to Canadians. In fact, this Prime Minister is so out of touch, he said that affordability is the best it's been in an entire decade, which is completely false. Canadians have increasing grocery prices because of things like high taxes and burden that this Liberal government has put on businesses. And on top of that, they're slamming Canadians, farmers, truckers, and other industries with their industrial carbon tax, which just doesn't make the cost of food go up. It makes the cost of everything in the supply chain go up. And like Liberal thinking and Liberal math, they think that they're charging the highest emitters or they're just charging the corporations. Those corporations and businesses will pass on the cost, and that cost ultimately has to be paid by the average Canadian. That's why they can't keep up. In fact, today under these Liberals, an average Canadian is spending 120% of their paycheck, 120% of their paycheck on necessities like food and shelter. They've doubled the cost of housing, and they've made the cost of food go up. In fact, this Prime Minister gave Canadians the worst worst food inflation in the entire G7. That's why now Canadians are using up their entire paycheck, mostly on housing, and everything else goes on credit card or they're borrowing money. And we're seeing debt loads. That's why now Canadians are also the most indebted households in the entire G7. They're picking up more and more on credit just for necessities. Now, Madam Speaker, it's not like the government doesn't have in front of them solutions. In fact, Conservatives for the last 10 years have been putting solutions forward. But for every solution, it seems like the Liberal government puts up 2 or 3 more problems for Canadians. So, for instance, what Conservatives will do and what we're proposing, scrap all the anti-development laws that the Liberal government passed. Get rid of Bill C-69, the No New Pipeline Bill. Let's get pipelines built in this country, LNG plants, mines, dams, all the infrastructure that Canada needs to get its resources to market and spread them out to the world. Let's get those anti-development laws out of the way. Get rid of the tanker ban. In fact, my colleague from Calgary Signal Hill has put a bill forward in this place to get rid of that tanker ban. So let's get pipelines built. Let's get a pipeline built to the coast, the West Coast, but it needs to be able to get from the West Coast to the Asian markets. We have to get rid of the tanker ban. Get rid of and scrap the industrial carbon tax that will make Canada more competitive on a world stage. The world needs what Canada has. We have it all underneath our feet. We just need this Liberal government to get out of the way so we can actually produce more and spread it to the world. We need to lower taxes, whether that's personal, business, or corporate tax, so we can create a better investing environment so that our investment comes back into Canada, not flows out. Let's get the capital gains tax deferred, like the Conservatives have put a plan forward. So any company that's reinvesting their capital gains that are earned, they will be able to defer their capital gains tax so we can get more people investing in more jobs, more equipment, and more investment back into Canada, not let it flow out like the Liberals have done over the last 10 years. And of course, the government waste, which it seems like it's endless. Whether it's the $20 billion in Liberal connected insiders or the $90 billion train boondoggle, let's get rid of those, let's get Canada back on track and make Canada the most profitable country in the world. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Chief Government.
I'm sorry, Madam Speaker. Did he mishap the speech? maybe he shouldn't have shared his time, because he accused Liberals of cherry-picking data, and then he focused on one report from 9 days ago, but seemingly missed the entire report that came out on Friday of last week, where it was identified that Canada has seen 90,000 jobs increase, unemployment has dropped, full-time work has surged, sectors across the economy have grown. It's fascinating how this member got up in this House, actually used the word and accused the government of cherry-picking data, but then didn't even bother to even utter one word about the incredible news for our economy that came out last Friday. I'm wondering if he would like to somehow explain to this House how in his debate he completely missed that point.
Honourable member for Calgary East.
Madam Speaker, that out-of-touch Liberal has completely missed the point. Is he really going to stand up and brag about Canada under this Liberal government having the second worst unemployment rate in the entire G7? And since this year started, this Liberal government is still responsible for 120,000 jobs that were lost. And in fact, there's a net loss of jobs in this country under this incompetent Liberal government. They continue to make fake announcements, fake handshakes, fake MOUs. The solution is simple. This Liberal government just needs to get out of the way.
Commentaire. Honorable
The Honourable Member. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his speech. He's raised a number of parliamentary budget officer. He's raised a number of these numbers. And the PBO has said that if tomorrow we were to buy the Trans Mountain pipeline in the West, well, we would actually lose money. It was supposed to cost $6 billion, but it actually cost $34 billion. This is not viable. If you buy a pipeline and you sell it, and you're losing money on it, does my colleague actually agree that we are using public funds and we should use them to buy these pipelines?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to my colleague for the question. And we didn't need to buy a pipeline. Canada did not need to buy a pipeline. It's because of failed Liberal policies that are anti-development that drove our investment away, that drove proponents of pipelines away, that the government not only bought the pipeline, but they were over budget by a lot, and they missed every single timeline target as well. But that just goes to the same background that this incompetent Liberal government has. They can never do anything on time or on budget.
Honourable member for Columbia, Kootenay, Southern Rockies.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the member for the speech. Just coming from a rural area and, going to the grocery stores and finding how expensive it is, it's a 2-hour trip for me to go into a grocery store. The food prices are so high, of course, their fuel prices are high. I have had no one tell me they've never had it so good. So I'm wondering if our member can sort of expand on that and say, have you heard that? Because I can't get out of a grocery store for 2 hours because it's so expensive, and they're blaming me for the food prices. Thank you.
Member for Calgary East.
Madam Speaker, unlike this Prime Minister who doesn't do his own grocery shopping, and he doesn't care that their policies are raising the cost of groceries, when I go grocery shopping, just like the member, I have to spend at least 2 hours there because of how many people come up to me and talk to me just about how much they're struggling. In fact, I had last week when I was grocery shopping at the local superstore, I had a single mom come up to me that said that she had to move in with her abusive husband, ex-husband once again, because she couldn't afford childcare and to live anywhere else. And groceries are just the last thing. She was one of those people that are having to put groceries back. This is the result of failed Liberal policies. This is the direct result. There is nothing technical about the suffering that Canadians are facing under this failed Liberal government.
The
Honourable Member from Mirabel, a brief question, please. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, the Conservatives are trying to convince us that there's a recession. This is a technical debate, but it actually ends up veiling the real debate, which is about Canadian productivity and purchasing power. Our real problem is that we don't have enough growth or productivity. Do the Conservatives not think that it would be more effective to actually talk about the real substantive issues here rather than debating definitions?
Defensive from the Honourable Member for Calgary East.
Well, we are in a full-blown Liberal recession, and here's the answer to our productivity issues. get the Liberal government out of the way. Scrap all the anti-development laws so we can get more.
Have to resume debate.